Have you ever felt the gaze of the ancient world upon you? A palpable weight in the silence of a forest or the oppressive dark of a forgotten ruin? Have you ever heard a sound on the wind that the rational mind dismisses, yet some deeper, more primal part of you recognizes as a warning? These sensations are not mere fancies. They are echoes, faint reverberations of truths that predate our modern certainties, truths etched into the very soil beneath our feet and carried in the blood of our ancestors. They are the ancestral memories of a time when the world was larger, wilder, and infinitely more dangerous, when the shadows at the edge of the firelight held more than just darkness. These truths are enshrined in the architecture of folklore, in the grim and enduring legends that refuse to be sterilized by the passage of time. I am your guide through these shadow-shrouded realms, and tonight we shall venture into the heart of this ancient dread. We shall explore the tales that humanity has whispered to itself in the dark, not as mere stories, but as coded wisdom, as psychological maps of our deepest fears and most profound anxieties. These are the legends that serve as boundary stones, marking the perilous edges of human behavior, the natural world, and the cosmic order. They're the collective nightmares that reveal uncomfortable truths about our own nature. Our journey tonight is a plunge into the abyss of this inherited terror. We shall not be recounting tales spun for children's entertainment, designed to elicit a fleeting shudder before the comfort of the light returns. No, these are far more substantive things. These are chronicles of consequence, parables of cosmic justice, and portraits of forces that operate on a scale far grander than our fleeting lives. We will exhume 6 of the world's most unsettling and philosophically potent legends, examining the entities that haunt the periphery of our understanding and asking what they truly represent. We will confront the specter of insatiable hunger, the chilling finality of fate, the seductive peril of beauty, the horror of familial betrayal, the suffocating grip of the past, and the terrifying duplicity that can lurk behind a familiar face. If you, like me, feel an inexorable pull toward the darkness, not for its own sake, but for the wisdom it conceals, then you have found a sanctuary here. This channel is a library of shadows, a place for the serious contemplation of the macabre and the meaningful. I invite you to become a permanent resident of this intellectual twilight. Subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so that you are never late for our descents into the profound and the profane. We are building a community of scholars, thinkers, and explorers dedicated to understanding the monsters that define us. Leave a comment below and tell us which of the world's great legends speaks most deeply to your own sense of unease. And now, let our journey into the heart of fear begin. We commence our expedition in the vast, sun-scorched plains of South America, the llanos of Venezuela and Colombia, a landscape of stark, unforgiving beauty. Here, amid the rustling grasses and the oppressive humidity, a sound is said to travel on the night air, a deceptively simple, descending whistle. This is the calling card of El Silbón, the Whistler, a legend born not of ancient gods or elemental spirits, but from a profoundly human act of monstrous transgression. He is no simple ghost. He is a curse made manifest, a walking embodiment of patricide and eternal, restless damnation. His motivation is not malice in the abstract, but a focused, punitive wrath directed at those who mirror his own sins, the unfaithful, the abusive, and above all, the dissolute and disrespectful. To see El Silbón is to behold a figure of grotesque and unnatural proportion. He is described as a towering, emaciated giant, a skeletal form draped in the tattered rags of a llanero or plainsman. His most horrifying feature is the heavy, stained sack he carries perpetually slung over one shoulder. The contents of this sack are the very source of his curse, the bleached and broken bones of the father he murdered. His supernatural abilities are intrinsically linked to sound and perception. The whistle he emits, a haunting sequence of notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, is a tool of psychological torment. When it sounds near, he is, in fact, far away, lulling his victim into a false sense of security. When a melody seems a faint, distant echo, he is already upon you, his cold breath on your neck. He is a master of spatial disorientation, a predator who hunts not with speed, but with the inexorable certainty of a creeping dread. The genesis of this horror lies in a story of spoiled youth and unimaginable fury. A young man, whose name is lost to history but whose arrogance is legendary, was known for his petulant and demanding nature. One afternoon, he demanded his father hunt for a deer, craving its heart and liver for his supper. The father, a patient and indulgent man, set out but returned empty-handed after a long and fruitless day. Consumed by a narcissistic rage that defied all reason, the son met his father not with understanding, but with a hunter's knife. He murdered him in cold blood, carved out the organs he so desired, and brought them home to his mother to be cooked. The mother, however, noticed the disturbing toughness and bitterness of the meat. Suspecting the horrific truth, she confronted her son, who confessed his abomination. It was the boy's grandfather who delivered the punishment that would echo through eternity. He tied the boy to a post, lashed him until his back was a ruin of raw flesh, and then rubbed the wounds with burning chili peppers and lemon juice. He then unleashed the dogs of hell upon him, declaring, "That you shall not have, accursed one. For the rest of time, you will carry the bones of your father and wander the plains, avenging your sin upon all wicked men." With this curse, the boy was transformed, his humanity burned away, leaving only the monstrous, whistling shell. Let us cast our minds back to the late 19th century, to a remote cattle ranch nestled deep within the Colombian plains. The patriarch of the estate, a man named Ignacio Vargas, was a figure of local renown, known less for his wealth than for his volcanic temper and his cruel treatment of his wife, his children, and his laborers. He was a drunkard and a philanderer, a man who saw kindness as a weakness and ruled his domain with fear. One sweltering evening, after a day of heavy drinking, Ignacio flew into a rage over a perceived slight from one of his ranch hands. He beat the man senseless and left him for dead near the edge of his property. As night fell, a strange, lilting whistle began to drift through the humid air. The other workers, huddled in their barracks, recognized the sound with a dread that was bone-deep. Ignacio, however, fortified by arrogance and alcohol, merely scoffed. He heard the whistle grow fainter, as if receding into the distance, and laughed it off as the wind. But an old woman, the ranch's cook, made the sign of the cross and whispered that a distant whistle meant imminent danger. Ignacio cursed her for a superstitious fool and stumbled toward his grand house. He never made it. The next morning, his family found his body sprawled on the veranda. His spine had been snapped, and his body had been stuffed into a burlap sack. In a detail that forever sealed the legend in the minds of the locals, they found that every bone within his body had been pulverized into dust, yet his skin remained unbroken. A small, almost imperceptible detail was noted by the local priest. From Ignacio's navel, a single drop of his blood had been neatly extracted. The whistler had collected his tithe. The legend of El Silbón is far more than a simple ghost story. It is a profound sociological and psychological artifact. At its core, it is an exploration of the broken covenant, the violation of the most sacred of familial bonds, that between parent and child. The whistler embodies the societal horror of patricide, a crime so heinous that it warrants a punishment that transcends death itself. He is a figure of cosmic justice, a supernatural enforcer in a land where mortal law can often be bent or broken by the powerful and corrupt. His specific targeting of drunkards and abusive men serves as a powerful cautionary tale, a form of folk justice that promises retribution where earthly authorities fail. Symbolically, the sack of bones he carries is a perpetual, physical manifestation of his guilt. He cannot escape it. It is both his burden and his identity. He is not merely haunted by his past. He is forced to carry it, to feel its weight with every step for all eternity. This transforms him from a mere monster into a tragic figure, a prisoner of his own unforgivable act. In the modern era, the tale of El Silbón continues to thrive, a testament to its enduring power. In the rural plains of Colombia and Venezuela, the story is still told with genuine fear. Parents use it to discipline unruly children, and men are warned that a night of excessive drinking and carousing might end with a fateful encounter on a lonely road. The distinctive whistle has become a part of the local soundscape, with any similar sound at night immediately invoking the legend. It has also found its way into popular culture, but often in a diluted form that misses the deep moral gravity of the original tale. The true horror of El Silbón is not that of a random monster, but of a specific, targeted judgment. It speaks to a contemporary anxiety about the breakdown of social and familial structures, the fear that without respect for our elders and our origins, we risk becoming monstrous ourselves. He is a reminder that some crimes are so offensive to the natural order that they stain the very land itself. Thus, the whistler wanders on, his mournful tune a permanent fixture of the Llanos nightscape. He is a chilling testament to the idea that some sins cannot be absolved, and that the most terrible prisons are not made of stone and iron, but of memory and bone. He is the sound of guilt on the wind, a perpetual echo of a single, terrible moment of rage. We now travel northward from the sun-baked plains to the immense, frozen forests of the North American continent, the ancestral lands of the Algonquian-speaking peoples. Here, in the deep, biting cold of the boreal winter, whispers speak of a different kind of entity, a spirit born not of a singular crime, but of a creeping, corrosive hunger. This is the Wendigo, a malevolent being that embodies the terrors of starvation, isolation, and the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. The Wendigo is not simply a monster to be fought. It is a psychic contagion, a spiritual sickness that can infect the human heart. Its motivation is pure, insatiable consumption, a hunger so profound that it can never be filled, driving it to devour flesh and, in doing so, to grow ever larger and ever hungrier. It is a perfect, horrifying loop of want. The physical form of the Wendigo is a subject of some variation, but all accounts agree on its emaciation and its terrifying size. It is often described as a gaunt, skeletal giant, its skin stretched taut over protruding bones, gray and tight like old parchment. Its eyes are pushed deep into their sockets, glowing with a cold, malevolent light, like embers at the bottom of a deep pit. Despite its starved appearance, it is a creature of immense power and speed, able to move through the forest with the silence of falling snow. Its lips are tattered and bloody, often chewed away to reveal long, yellowed fangs. A key and deeply disturbing detail is that as it consumes a victim, it grows in proportion to the meal, ensuring that its hunger is never, ever sated. Its supernatural abilities are tied to the harsh environment it inhabits. It can command the winter winds, summon blizzards, and move with unnatural swiftness. Its voice is said to be the shriek of the blizzard itself, and its very presence exudes a corpse-like stench of decay and frozen earth. The origin of the Wendigo is twofold. It can be a primordial spirit that has always existed within the wilderness, an embodiment of winter's brutal indifference to life. But more terrifyingly, a Wendigo can be created. A human being who resorts to cannibalism in the wilderness, succumbing to desperation and breaking the ultimate taboo, can become infected by the spirit of the Wendigo. This transformation is known as Wendigo psychosis, a condition where greed and hunger overwhelm a person's humanity, twisting their body and soul into a monstrous caricature of their former self. This dual origin makes the Wendigo particularly frightening. It is both an external threat and an internal one, a monster that lurks in the woods and a potential monster that lurks within the human heart itself. Consider the plight of a small band of Cree hunters in the harsh winter of 1788. They were led by a man named Cale, known for his skill but also for a deep-seated pride that often bordered on avarice. A particularly brutal winter had descended, trapping the party deep in the wilderness with dwindling supplies. The game had vanished, and the specter of starvation began to haunt their camp. As days turned into weeks, desperation gnawed at them. One of the younger hunters, weak from hunger, perished in the night. The others, bound by tradition and honor, prepared to give him a proper burial, but Kale intervened. His eyes held a new, unsettling gleam. He argued that survival superseded all other laws, that the dead could serve the living. The others recoiled in horror, but Kale's will, sharpened by his gnawing hunger, was absolute. He was the first to partake of the forbidden flesh, and in that act, something within him fractured. He grew stronger, but his spirit grew colder. The remaining hunters, seeing the change in him, the way his eyes sunk into his skull, the unnatural pallor of his skin, fled in terror. They were not fast enough. Kale, no longer fully human, hunted them down one by one. The last survivor, a young man named Chayton, managed to escape, and he brought back the tale. He spoke of how Kale's form seemed to stretch and distort, his limbs elongating, his voice becoming a rasping hiss that mimicked the winter wind. The hunting party was never found, but for generations afterward, hunters in that territory would speak of a towering, skeletal figure that moved through the trees, its glowing eyes burning with an endless, ravenous hunger. The Wendigo is a powerful and complex metaphor, operating on multiple layers of meaning. On the most fundamental level, it is a visceral representation of the horrors of starvation and the brutal choices it forces. It is a cautionary tale about the fragility of civilization and the thin veneer of morality that separates humanity from savagery when survival is at stake. However, its symbolism extends far beyond that. The Wendigo is the ultimate allegory for greed and excess. The creature's defining trait, that it grows larger with every meal, yet its hunger only intensifies, is a perfect metaphor for insatiable avarice, whether for food, wealth, or power. It teaches that consumption for its own sake, without balance or gratitude, leads not to satisfaction, but to a perpetual, agonizing state of want. It is a spiritual poison. This interpretation has gained even more resonance in modern times, where the legend is often seen as a critique of the destructive, consumptive nature of colonialism and industrial capitalism, which devour natural resources without end, growing ever larger, but leaving only destruction and emptiness in their wake. The Wendigo's presence in the modern consciousness is robust, though often simplified. It has become a staple of horror fiction and cinema, frequently portrayed as a generic forest monster, stripping it of its deeper psychological and cultural significance. However, among indigenous communities, the story retains its original power and gravity. It is still seen as a real spiritual danger, a warning against selfishness and the violation of natural law. The concept of Wendigo psychosis has been studied by psychologists and anthropologists as a culture-bound syndrome, a real-world manifestation of how deeply this legend is embedded in the psyche. The Wendigo serves as a potent environmental allegory today, a stark reminder that a society built on endless consumption is, in essence, devouring itself. It warns that if we continue to consume the earth with the voracious, unthinking hunger of the Wendigo, we too will be left as hollow, perpetually starving specters in a desolate wasteland of our own making. In the end, the Wendigo is more than a creature. It is a principle. It is the embodiment of hunger untethered from need, of desire that has become a cancer of the soul. It haunts the frozen north as a timeless reminder that the most dangerous monsters are often the ones we create ourselves, born from the cold, empty spaces within the human heart. Let us now leave the frozen forests and journey to the mist-wreathed lochs, dark rivers, and placid ponds of Scandinavia. Here, beneath the still, reflective surface of the water, lurks a creature of seductive and lethal beauty, the Nakin, or the Nyx. Unlike the raw, brutish force of the Wendigo, the Nakin is a creature of terrifying subtlety, and artistry. It is a shape-shifting water spirit, a master musician, an attempter who preys on the unwary through their own desires and vanities. The Nakin's motivation is not hunger or vengeance, but a cold, possessive need to draw life down into its dark, watery domain. It is the embodiment of the perilous allure of the unknown, the fatal beauty that can be found in nature, in art, and in the depths of our own souls. The Nakin is a consummate shapeshifter, and its appearance is fluid and deceptive. It may appear as a handsome young man playing a violin or harp by the water's edge, his music so enchanting that it compels listeners to walk toward him, heedless of the danger. It can also take the form of a magnificent white horse, calmly grazing by the shore, inviting children or weary travelers to climb upon its back, only to then plunge into the depths, drowning them. Other times, it might appear as a submerged log, a beautiful flower, or simply a churning in the water. Its true form, rarely seen, is said to be a horrifying mass of seaweed, roots, and drowned flesh, with glowing green eyes that pierce the murky water. Its primary supernatural ability is the power of its music. The Nakin's playing is supernaturally persuasive, capable of overriding free will and luring victims to their doom. It is also said to be able to teach its musical skill to humans, but always at a terrible price, a sacrifice, a promise, or the soul of the student themselves. The origin of the Nakin is tied to the ancient, animistic beliefs of the Norse people, who saw spirits in every rock, tree, and body of water. The Nakin is one of the Veetir, or nature spirits, a being neither wholly good nor wholly evil, but operating according to its own inscrutable, inhuman laws. Its genesis is not from a single event, but from the landscape itself. It is born of the water's duality, its life-giving properties, and its capacity for sudden, indifferent violence. It represents the inherent danger that lies beneath a calm, beautiful surface. To appease the Nakin, one would have to make offerings, a drop of blood, a black animal, or a coin tossed into the water before crossing. Its name was not to be spoken aloud near its domain, for to name it was to summon it. This highlights a key aspect of its legend. It is a power that demands respect and caution, a personification of nature's untamable heart. We turn to a tale from 18th century Norway, from a village nestled beside a deep, dark fjord. There lived a young man named Lars, who possessed a passionate but unremarkable talent for the violin. His greatest ambition was to become the finest musician in the valley, to win the heart of the beautiful Ellen, who was betrothed to a wealthier rival. Consumed by envy and ambition, Lars grew desperate. He had heard the old tales of the Nakin that lived in the waterfall at the fjord's edge, a spirit that could grant unparalleled musical genius for a price. One moonless night, ignoring the warnings of the village elders, Lars went to the waterfall, carrying his violin and a small, black cat as an offering. He called out the Nakin's name 3 times. The water churned, and from the spray emerged a figure of ethereal beauty, a man with eyes like polished river stones and hair like dark water weeds. "You seek mastery," the Nakin's voice whispered, a sound like water flowing over rocks. "I can grant it. Your fingers will dance upon the strings as no mortals have before. But the first tune you play with this gift will not be your own. It will be mine, and when I call for my payment, you will come blinded by his desire." Lars agreed. The Nakin placed a cold, wet hand upon the violin, and it seemed to thrum with a new, dark energy. When Lars returned to the village, his music was transformed. It was breathtaking, divine, and it won him fame, fortune, and the hand of Ellen. On his wedding day, as the celebration reached its peak, he lifted his violin to play for his bride. But the melody that emerged was not a joyous wedding tune. It was a haunting, melancholic air that seemed to pull at the souls of all who heard it. It was the Nakin's song. As he played, an irresistible compulsion seized him. He walked out of the hall, playing all the while, his feet carrying him inexorably toward the waterfall. The villagers, entranced by the music, could only watch in horror as Lars walked directly into the churning water, never to be seen again. The knock-in had collected its price. The legend of the knock-in is a rich tapestry of psychological and cultural symbolism. It is most obviously a cautionary tale about the dangers of water, a practical warning for communities living in close proximity to rivers, lakes, and treacherous coastlines. But its deeper meaning is an exploration of the seductive nature of ambition and the corrupting potential of art. Lars' story is a classic Faustian bargain. He desires skill without the effort, glory without the journey. The knock-in represents the dangerous shortcut, the promise of genius that comes from an external, inhuman source. The legend suggests that true artistry must be earned through human struggle and emotion. When it is granted by a non-human entity, it becomes a tool of that entity, hollowed of its human soul. The knock-in's music, beautiful as it is ultimately sterile and destructive. It is a metaphor for art that has become detached from morality, beauty that serves only to ensnare and destroy. The shape-shifting aspect of the creature also speaks to the deceptive nature of appearances, warning us that the most beautiful surfaces can hide the most profound dangers. Today, the knock-in continues to hold a place in the Scandinavian imagination. The word itself is still used to refer to water lilies in some dialects, a beautiful flower with roots deep in the dark mud, a perfect encapsulation of the spirit's nature. The legend is a source of inspiration for artists, musicians, and writers, particularly within the genres of folk music and fantasy. But its core warning remains profoundly relevant. In an age of digital filters, artificial personas, and the relentless pursuit of fame, the knock-in is a powerful symbol of deceptive allure. It reminds us to be wary of things that seem too perfect, too easy. It asks us to consider the source of the music we are drawn to, be it a political ideology, a social media trend, or a new technology, and to question what price we might be paying for its enchanting song. The knock-in is the whisper that reminds us that beneath the most placid surfaces, the depths are still dark, cold, and hungry. The knock-in, therefore, is not merely a monster, but a guardian of a necessary truth. It personifies the idea that true beauty is often intertwined with danger, and that to pursue one while ignoring the other is to invite a swift and melodic doom. It is the beautiful, deadly song of the abyss. We now cross the sea to the Emerald Isle, to the rolling green hills and rain-swept coasts of Ireland, a land steeped in a mythology that is both beautiful and deeply melancholic. Here, the veil between worlds is said to be thin, and the beings that cross it are often harbingers of profound, inescapable truths. Of all these entities, none is more terrifyingly direct in its purpose than the Dullahan. He is not a tempter, nor a creature of hunger. He is a psychopomp, a collector of souls, the embodiment of death's final, non-negotiable summons. To see the Dullahan is not a warning of death, it is its announcement. His motivation is simple and absolute, cosmic duty. He rides to collect a specific soul whose time has come, and nothing on heaven or earth can stand in his way. The appearance of the Dullahan is iconic and deeply unsettling. He is a headless rider, typically cloaked in black, astride a snorting, demonic black steed with eyes of fire. He carries his own severed head under one arm, holding it aloft like a lantern. The head itself is described as having the texture and color of stale dough or moldy cheese, with a hideous, manic grin that splits the face from ear to ear. Its small, black eyes dart about constantly, able to see for vast distances, even in the darkest night. The most potent weapon in his arsenal is a human spine, which he uses as a whip. His coach, the Quast Badhar, is a terrifying construction made of human remains. Thigh bones for the wheels, a skull for a lantern, and a covering made from a worm-eaten paw. The Dullahan possesses only one weakness, a deep-seated fear and aversion to gold. Even a single gold pin is enough to make him vanish, though this will not save the person whose soul he has come to claim. It will only delay the inevitable. The Dullahan's origins are believed to be ancient, likely stemming from the pre-Christian Celtic god, Crom Dubh. Dub was a fertility god who demanded a grim payment for his bounty. Human sacrifice, traditionally carried out by decapitation. When Christianity spread across Ireland, the old gods were not entirely forgotten. They were demonized, their stories twisted into the folklore of monsters and devils. Dub, the dark, decapitating god, was transformed into the Dullahan, the headless rider who comes to claim the souls of the dying. This lineage gives the Dullahan a gravitas that other specters lack. He is not a restless ghost or a mindless beast. He is a vestige of an ancient, deposed deity, still carrying out a version of his sacred, albeit terrifying, function. He is a piece of Ireland's pagan past that refuses to be exorcised. Let us travel to County Sligo in the year 1847, the height of the Great Famine. Misery was a shroud upon the land. In a small cottage lived a young woman named Aoife, who was watching her mother fade away from fever and starvation. Aoife was a girl of fierce, defiant spirit. She refused to accept fate and railed against the heavens for their cruelty. One night, as a storm raged outside, she heard the sound of galloping hooves approaching, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of her home. Peeking through a crack in the door, she saw him, the headless rider on his black charger, his decaying head held high, its eyes scanning the darkness. The horse stopped directly outside her cottage. In that moment, Aoife knew he had come for her mother. In a fit of desperate, love-fueled rage, she grabbed the only object of value she possessed, a small gold locket her father had given her, and threw open the door. She stood before the terrifying apparition and screamed, "You will not have her!" holding the locket before her like a shield. A terrible, guttural shriek erupted from the severed head, and the Dullahan reared his horse, recoiling from the glint of gold. He turned and galloped away into the storm. For a moment, Aoife felt a surge of triumph. Inside, her mother's breathing seemed to steady. But the victory was hollow. The Dullahan had been turned away, but the appointment had been made. Exactly 1 year later, on the very same night, Aoife again heard the thunder of hooves. This time, she had no gold left to offer. The door burst open with a gust of wind that smelled of the grave, and the Dullahan pointed a finger made of bone directly at her mother's bed. At that exact moment, her mother drew her last breath. The Dullahan had been delayed, but destiny had not been denied. The Dullahan is a stark and uncompromising symbol of the inevitability of death. In a culture that has a rich and complex relationship with mortality, the Dullahan cuts through all ambiguity. He represents a death that is not gentle, not a peaceful transition, but a sudden, terrifying, and unstoppable event. He is the personification of fate in its most absolute form. The fact that he cannot be reasoned with, fought, or bargained with is central to his meaning. He is not a moral judge like Silbón. He does not care if you are a sinner or a saint. He is simply a messenger, a functionary of the cosmic order. The detail of the head being carried separately is significant. It suggests a division between sight and action. The eyes and the head seek out the victim, seeing their destiny, while the body carries out the inexorable task. The aversion to gold is also symbolically potent. Gold, a symbol of mortal wealth, power, and worldly value, is utterly meaningless in the face of death. It can create a momentary barrier, just as wealth can sometimes delay the consequences of illness or danger in the mortal world, but cannot ultimately change the final outcome. Death, the Dullahan teaches, is the great equalizer that no amount of earthly treasure can bribe. While perhaps less prevalent in mainstream global horror, the Dullahan remains a potent figure within Ireland and in the Irish diaspora. He is a touchstone of Celtic folklore, a figure instantly recognizable and deeply feared. His influence can be seen in literature and film, most famously as the inspiration for the Headless Horseman in Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, in a modern world that strives to control every aspect of life, to delay aging, and to medicalize and sanitize the process of dying. The Dullahan offers a chilling counter-narrative. He is a visceral reminder of our own powerlessness in the face of our ultimate end. He represents the uncomfortable truth that despite all our technology and progress, we are all subject to the same final, non-negotiable appointment. His galloping hooves are the sound of a clock that cannot be stopped, a grim but necessary reminder of our own mortality. The Dullahan, therefore, is not evil in the way a demon is evil. He is a force of nature, as impersonal and as final as a tidal wave or an earthquake. He is the terrifying silence that follows the last heartbeat, the black coach that comes for us all, riding forever on the dark roads of the Irish night. Our journey now takes us eastward, to the ancient lands of China, where folklore is deeply intertwined with concepts of ancestry, social order, and the flow of cosmic energy, or qi. Here we encounter a creature of the night that is not a spirit or a demon, but a horrifying perversion of the human form itself, the jiangshi. Often translated as hopping vampire or hopping zombie. The jiangshi is a reanimated corpse, a being caught between life and death, driven by a primal instinct to absorb the life force of the living. It is a monster born from ritual, improper burial, and the disruption of the natural order. Its motivation is a blind, instinctual thirst for qi, the vital essence that animates all living things. The appearance of the jiangshi is distinct and deeply rooted in its cultural origins. It is typically depicted dressed in the official robes of a Qing dynasty mandarin, a detail that fixes it in a specific historical and social context. Its body is stiff, a victim of rigor mortis, which is the mythological explanation for its signature mode of locomotion, hopping with its arms outstretched. Its skin is pale or greenish-white, often with long, white hair growing from it, a sign of its unnatural longevity. Long, curved black fingernails and a prehensile tongue are other common features. Its body is not subject to normal decay, but it is highly susceptible to certain spiritual and elemental forces. Its weaknesses are numerous and specific, reflecting Taoist cosmology. It can be repelled by mirrors, which reflect its own monstrousness, the sound of a rooster's crow, which signals the coming of yang energy daylight, peachwood swords, and glutinous rice. A yellow paper talisman inscribed with a Taoist spell, when applied to its forehead, can immobilize it completely. The creation of a jiangshi is not a matter of chance, but a result of specific failures in the transition from life to death. According to folklore, if a person dies a violent death by suicide or with a heart full of vengeance, their soul may fail to leave the body. This lingering spiritual energy or animates the corpse, turning it into a jiangshi. Alternatively, improper burial rites are a common cause. If a funeral is delayed, if the coffin is not properly sealed, or if the burial site has poor feng shui, the body can become corrupted by yin energy and rise again. In some tales, a bolt of lightning striking a coffin can have the same effect. This emphasis on ritual and cosmic balance is key. The jiangshi is a product of disorder, a physical manifestation of a spiritual process that has gone horribly wrong. Imagine a small village in rural Hunan province during the late Qing dynasty. A wealthy but despised magistrate, Lord Bao, died suddenly under mysterious circumstances. His family, eager to secure his wealth and status, rushed the funeral preparations, cutting corners and ignoring the advice of the local Taoist priest regarding the auspicious date and location for the burial. They interred him in a damp, shadowy plot of land known for its bad energy. Weeks later, livestock began to disappear, found drained of blood. Then, a night watchman vanished, his shredded uniform discovered near the cemetery. Fear gripped the village. The priest, examining the signs, knew what had happened. He gathered the brave men of the village, armed them with peachwood swords and bags of sticky rice, and led them to Lord Bao's grave. They found the tomb disturbed, the earth pushed aside from within. Following a trail of disturbed soil, they tracked the creature to a nearby cave. Inside, they found the animated corpse of Lord Bao, his mandarin robes pristine, but his face a pale, monstrous mask. The creature, blind but sensing their life force, lunged, hopping with unnatural speed. The villagers fought back, using the priest's knowledge. They threw rice to slow it down, used mirrors to confuse it, and finally, the priest, chanting a powerful incantation, managed to slap a yellow talisman onto its forehead. The jiangshi froze mid-hop, its arms outstretched, a silent, rigid monument to corrupted power and spiritual neglect. They returned the body to its tomb, this time performing the correct rites to ensure its eternal peace. The jiangshi is a creature laden with sociological and philosophical meaning. On the surface, it is a monster representing the fear of death and the desecration of the dead. However, its specific characteristics reveal deeper anxieties. The Mandarin robes are crucial. They link the monster to the ruling class, to the bureaucracy and the rigid social hierarchy of imperial China. The jiangshi can be interpreted as a symbol of a corrupt, soulless authority that continues to oppress the people even after its death. It is the dead weight of the past, the unthinking, unfeeling adherence to defunct traditions that literally drains the life from the present. Its stiffness, its inability to bend its limbs, is a powerful metaphor for social and intellectual rigidity. It cannot adapt. It can only hop blindly forward on its predetermined path. The long list of esoteric weaknesses also reinforces this theme. The jiangshi, a creature of imbalance and dark-yin energy, is defeated by things that represent order, balance, and the light of yang energy. Religious scripture, natural elements like peach wood, and the coming of the dawn. It is a monster that is defeated by restoring cosmic and social harmony. In the modern world, the jiangshi experienced a massive surge in popularity thanks to a wave of Hong Kong cinema in the 1980s and 90s. These films blended horror, comedy, and kung fu, creating a unique genre and cementing the image of the hopping, robed figure in the global consciousness. While often played for laughs, these films still tapped into the core themes of the legend: the clash between ancient tradition and modern life, and the need for spiritual knowledge to combat the forces of darkness. Today, the jiangshi remains a potent symbol. It can be seen as a metaphor for mindless consumerism, an unthinking force that hops from one desire to the next, consuming without purpose. It also speaks to a fear of history repeating itself, of old ideologies and hatreds rising from the grave to prey upon the living. The jiangshi is a warning that the past is never truly dead, and that unless we properly lay our traditions and our traumas to rest, they will surely return to haunt us. Ultimately, the jiangshi is a creature of profound stillness, a paradox of undeath. It is a chilling reminder that the most frightening horrors are often not those that are frenzied and chaotic, but those that are rigid, relentless, and unchangeably bound to a dark and unforgiving past. For our final legend, we venture into the archipelago of the Philippines, a nation whose folklore is a vibrant, complex fusion of indigenous animism, Spanish Catholicism, and Southeast Asian mythology. In the deep of the night, particularly in rural provinces, a terror is said to take flight that embodies duplicity, visceral horror, and the monstrosity that can hide within the most familiar of communities. This is the Manananggal, a creature whose name is derived from the Tagalog word for to separate. The Manananggal is a horrifying being, typically female, who could detach her upper torso from her lower body, sprout vast, bat-like wings, and fly through the night in search of victims. Her motivation is a thirst for the blood and internal organs of humans, with a particular, gruesome preference for the hearts of fetuses, which she sucks from sleeping pregnant women using a long, proboscis-like tongue. The Manananggal's appearance is a study in grotesque duality. By day, she appears as a normal, often beautiful and reclusive woman living within the community. She can be a neighbor, a friend, or a family member, making her discovery a source of profound betrayal and social terror. At night, however, she undergoes her hideous transformation. After anointing herself with a special oil, she severs her torso, leaving her legs and lower body standing placidly where she left them. Her upper half sprouts enormous leathery wings, her hair grows wild, Her fingernails sharpen into claws, and her eyes glow with a red, predatory light. Her primary abilities are flight and the aforementioned prehensile tongue, which can extend to incredible lengths and pass through the smallest of cracks in a roof or window to reach her prey. Her signature weakness lies in her bisected form. The lower half of her body, left vulnerable while she hunts, is her Achilles heel. If one were to find it and sprinkle salt, crushed garlic, or ash upon the exposed flesh, the Mananangle would be unable to rejoin her body. Trapped in her monstrous form, she would be utterly destroyed by the first rays of the morning sun. The origin of the Mananangle is murky, blending various mythological threads. She is often considered a type of aswang, a general term for a host of shape-shifting, ghoulish creatures in Filipino folklore. Her creation is not typically a curse or a single event, but a process of infection or inheritance. It is believed that the monstrosity can be passed down through a family line, or that a normal person can become a Mananangle by ingesting a magical black chick that the creature carries in its throat. This chick is said to be the source of its power, and it can be voluntarily passed from an aging Mananangle to a successor, often through a kiss, ensuring the continuation of the evil. This method of propagation makes the creature particularly insidious. It is a corruption that spreads quietly within a community, a hidden sickness passed from one person to another. Let us consider a story whispered in a small village on the island of Panay during the Spanish colonial period. A young, newly married couple, Mateo and Isabel, were expecting their first child. Their happiness was a light in the village, but it was watched from afar by an old, solitary woman named Alida, who lived at the edge of the forest. Alida was known for her beauty in her youth, but had grown withdrawn and bitter with age. As Isabel's pregnancy progressed, she began to suffer from terrible nightmares and a persistent feeling of weakness. At night, Mateo would hear a strange, flapping sound on their nipa hut roof, followed by a faint clicking, but he always dismissed it as a bird or the settling of the house. One evening, a traveling herbalist, wise in the old ways, was visiting the village. He heard of Isabel's condition and, after examining her, his face grew grim. He gave Mateo a string of garlic and a container of coarse salt. Tonight, he instructed, do not sleep. Watch the roof, and listen for the call of the tick-tick bird. When its call is loud, the creature is far. When it is soft, she is upon you. That night, Mateo waited, his heart pounding. He heard the soft cry of the tick-tick and then the telltale flapping. Peering through a gap in the wall, he saw a hideous, winged torso descending towards his home. It was Alida. He watched in horror as a long, thin tongue snaked down through the thatch. Bolting outside, he saw, hidden in a grove of banana trees, the standing lower half of the old woman's body. Remembering the herbalist's words, he frantically poured the salt and garlic onto the severed waist. A blood-curdling shriek tore through the night from the sky above. The winged creature tried to descend, to rejoin its other half, but it could not. It circled the grove in a panic as the eastern sky began to lighten. With the first touch of dawn, the Mananangle ignited in a flash of black fire, turning to ash that was scattered by the morning breeze. The Mananangle is a profoundly rich psychological and sociological symbol. Her defining feature, the separation of her body, is a powerful metaphor for duplicity and the fractured self. She represents the terrifying idea that the people we think we know can have a hidden, monstrous side. She's the smiling neighbor who is secretly a predator, the pillar of the community who engages in horrific acts in the dark. This speaks to a deep-seated anxiety about social cohesion and the trustworthiness of others. Her specific targeting of pregnant women and fetuses is also deeply significant. She is a perversion of the feminine and the maternal. Instead of creating and nurturing life, she consumes it at its most vulnerable stage. This makes her a symbol of corrupted femininity, a manifestation of fears surrounding female power, sexuality, and reproduction, likely amplified by the patriarchal structures of colonial rule. The method of her defeat, attacking her vulnerable, earthbound lower half, is equally symbolic. It suggests that no matter how high this hidden evil flies, it is always tethered to a grounded, mortal weakness. The monster can be defeated by exposing its secret, its other half, to the purifying light of truth, represented by the salt and the sun. The legend of the Manananggal is alive and well in the Philippines today. It remains one of the most famous and feared creatures of the nation's folklore, a staple of ghost stories told from the bustling cities to the most remote islands. It is a constant presence in Filipino horror cinema, literature, and graphic novels, where it continues to be reinterpreted and explored. In a modern context, the Manananggal can be seen as a metaphor for the hidden corruptions within society. She is the politician who presents a benevolent face to the public while preying on the vulnerable, the corporation that touts its ethics while engaging in destructive practices, the social media influencer whose curated life masks a toxic reality. She is the ultimate symbol of the two-faced nature of modern existence, the terrifying gap between public persona and private monstrosity. The Manananggal is, therefore, the ultimate monster of the community. She is not an outsider who attacks from the wilderness, but an insider whose evil rots the social fabric from within. Her legend is a timeless and terrifying warning to look closely at the world around us, for the greatest horrors are often those that have been hiding in plain sight all along. And so, our journey through these 6 landscapes of dread draws to its close. We have walked the sun-scorched plains with the eternally burdened El Silbón. We have felt the biting winds of the north that carry the whispers of the Wendigo. We have listened to the fatal, enchanting music of the knock-in from the depths of its watery grave. We have witnessed the inexorable ride of the Dullahan, the final summons on the dark roads of Ireland. We have faced the rigid, unthinking horror of the Jiangshi, a relic of a past that will not stay buried. And we have uncovered the horrifying duplicity of the Manananggal, the monster who lives amongst us. What wisdom, then, have we gleaned from this descent into darkness? What unifying thread connects these disparate nightmares born of different lands and different cultures? It is this, that our legends, our monsters, are never truly about the monstrous. They are, and have always been, about us. They are mirrors, crafted in the dark, that reflect our most profound truths. Each creature we have examined is a personification of a human failing, a societal anxiety, or an inescapable aspect of the human condition. They are allegories for guilt, greed, ambition, fate, dogma, and betrayal. They are the guardians of taboos, the enforcers of cosmic balance, and the keepers of ancestral warnings. In these tales, we see humanity grappling with its most fundamental questions. They teach us that patricide is a sin so profound it echoes for eternity. They warn that insatiable hunger for anything will not lead to fulfillment, but to a hollow, perpetual emptiness. They caution that beauty and genius, when sought without discipline and morality, become a deadly trap. They remind us, in the starkest possible terms, that our mortality is a certainty that no wealth can bribe. They show us that an unexamined past and a rigid adherence to dead ideas will inevitably rise up to drain the life from the present. And they reveal the terrifying truth that the greatest danger often comes not from without, but from the hidden corruption within our own communities and perhaps within our own hearts. These are not just stories, they're diagnostics of the human soul. To listen to these stories, to truly understand them, is to partake in an ancient and vital tradition. It is to become a keeper of the wisdom that our ancestors encoded in these terrifying narratives. By subscribing to this channel, you are not merely a spectator. You are joining a fellowship of guardians dedicated to preserving and interpreting these essential truths. You are affirming that these legends hold a value far beyond simple entertainment. So, if you believe in the power of these stories, subscribe to our channel. Share these chronicles with those who are not afraid to look into the darkness. And leave your thoughts in the comments, for it is in our collective discussion that the full meaning of these tales is illuminated. The world is full of such stories, an endless library of shadows, each containing its own stark lesson. The legends we have discussed are not relics. They're living things, evolving with us. They're warnings as relevant today as they were 1,000 years ago. I will continue to be your faithful guide on these journeys, your narrator for the annals of the night. May the shadows you encounter be instructive, and may the whispers you hear on the wind carry wisdom rather than despair. The best monsters, after all, are always the ones that show us something true about ourselves. Until our next descent, remain vigilant, for the night is old, and it remembers everything.